Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Rejected a request by former President Joe Biden to block the release of audio recordings and transcripts of his interviews with a memoir ghostwriter before he was elected president. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, joins us. We know Biden's team has launched several efforts, Jeff, to block the release of these tapes. But what comes next following the court's ruling?
So in a 2-1 decision, a 3-judge panel from the U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C. ruling that public interest in these materials outweighs Biden's personal privacy concerns. But the court did put a temporary pause on the ruling until August 3rd, giving Biden time to appeal the to the D.C. Full Circuit or Supreme Court. Now, the materials at the center of this controversy include redacted transcripts and around 70 hours of audio recordings between Biden and his ghostwriter from 2016 and 2017 regarding his memoir titled Promise Me Dad. The tapes were originally obtained by special counsel Robert Hur during his 2023 investigation into Biden's handling of classified documents, where he ultimately declined to file charges. Following his decision, conservative think tank the Heritage Foundation filed a Freedom of Information Act request to obtain the recordings.
Now, the Justice Department had released portions of the transcripts from these interviews, but they had not yet released the audio files themselves so that we, the American people, could listen for ourselves to see exactly what Joe Biden said, how he answered, how he delivered those answers.
A spokesperson for Biden speaking out following the ruling, saying in part, quote, President Biden's conversations for a book a decade ago that discussed his late son are private and were provided to the Department of Justice on the express condition they stay that way, adding reversing course and making them public is just the latest example of this administration weaponizing the Justice Department for political retribution. Now, the spokesperson adding there that while Biden disagrees with the ruling, he does respect the courts and the role an independent judiciary plays in a healthy democracy.
Folks, we're live on Worldview Tube and X Spaces simulcast. Well, friends, another major victory. That's what you just heard. A federal appeals court rejected Joe Biden's last-ditch effort to bury the audio recordings of his interviews with ghostwriter Mark Zwonitzer. The tapes will likely show Biden's memory as, remember, hazy, fuzzy, and poor in the interviews. Fearing his unfitness for the presidency being exposed, Biden has fought very hard to seal those records and keep them that way. But the Oversight Project fought harder. They won, and America's going to finally hear the truth. But the revelations keep on coming, folks. In New Jersey, the company that runs the voting system just confirmed there was no software glitch proving the Democrat governor, Mikey Sherrill, to be a liar after she was forced to admit state officials knowingly put thousands of non-citizens onto their voter rolls, and they voted. And President Trump declassified a bunch of documents the other night in his speech, covering up. What were they doing? Covering up a seditious operation, that's my opinion, against him, but really against the will of us, the American people, and revealing former FBI senior leader Nikki Floris admitted that she was basically running a shadow government. That's the exact words from her emails, while suppressing China election interference intel on fake IDs for mail-in ballots, then testified under oath that no foreign power was hacking our systems. And Senator Jim Banks just dropped the Citizenship Act of 2026, declaring children of invaders are not entitled to birthright citizenship, putting into law that the Supreme Court blocked from President Trump's executive order. And that's why I'm bringing in the man helping drive these fights, Jeff Clark, Vice President of the Litigation at the Oversight Project, and a former official in the first Trump administration and this Trump administration, and he's got a lot of scars to prove it. Welcome back, Jeff, and thanks for joining me today.
Always good to see you, Colonel. Thanks for having me.
Well, this litigation on the Biden audio tapes with the ghostwriter, that's really big deal that most people really hadn't been paying attention to, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been pressing hard and hard. I think once we won the appeal 2-1 at the DC Circuit in emergency litigation, that's what caused the mainstream media to sit up and take notice and say, hey, it looks like these documents, these audio tapes are going to come out. And, I think the American people are going to hear for themselves that Joe Biden, as of the time these interviews were occurring during 2016, 2017, he was already senile. He was already not, sufficiently mentally capable to be president. This is why we got the auto pen presidency from 2021 to early 2025. It's disgraceful. The people who covered that up should be held accountable, and the people who put him up and ran him for president to hold the highest office in our nation and to be the commander in chief, knowing that he had these mental deficiencies and Alzheimer's or whatever it is exactly that he has. We all know that he has something or some constellation of things. It's unconscionable to me. But that's why they're fighting so hard not to let these tapes and transcripts come out before the midterms, because it exposes the lies of the Democrat Party in terms of what lengths they're willing to go to take and exercise power, Colonel.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Jeff, you've worked in 2 administrations now in the Trump years. Why is it so difficult to hold the government officials accountable? Because a lot of these people that have been hiding this stuff and resisting are government officials. Why is it so hard?
It comes down a lot of times to who is in the places. And also the Trump administration, right, in 47 has a very ambitious agenda. And it requires a massive number of lawyers in order to execute it. And what the Trump 45 era exposed to, I think a lot of people who hadn't thought about it before, is that the Justice Department is basically 90%, especially in Main justice. It's a little bit different, I think, sometimes when you go out to the local U.S. attorney's offices in what the left regards as flyover country, the percentages would be lower. But in D.C., it's like 90% Democrats. And I can tell you from my 2 stints at the Justice Department, one in the Bush administration starting in 2001, and then in the Trump 45 administration, that it's just obvious if you have a brain and you're the political leader of some component of the Justice Department, when you interact with the career lawyers, that most of them are Democrats. Now, I put them into 3 boxes. There are people who are willing to, follow orders, but don't exactly volunteer and give you great enthusiasm about that. There are very much smaller cadre of people who their view is, I'm here to serve whoever the president is and the president's nominees, designees, et cetera. And then there's a category of people who are they're going to resist everything you try to do because they do not agree with it. And, I wouldn't say that reaches a majority of the people at the Justice Department in Main Justice, but it's grown over time. It was at one level in Bush 43 based on the Clinton administration when I arrived there. It was definitely at a higher level in Trump 45 after the Obama administration, had 2 terms. And, after Biden, I'm sure I didn't go back to DOJ for this time in Trump 47. I was at the White House at OMB. But I'm sure when they arrived, if there was someone who could have observed things from Bush to Trump 45 to Trump 47 with, a Biden term intervening, that problem had just gotten worse. So that's part of it. I want our conversation to be organic, but there is something I want to note about your intro on the Biden tapes case, which is what Biden's spokesman, TJ Ducklo, said. So, the viewers can go and back and look at it. And he says, these people have basically no morals. They want private conversations, from President Biden about his son, who, tragically died of cancer. That is a complete lie. the district court found that there were no sensitive materials, in what was redacted by the Trump 47 Justice Department, and the DC Circuit 2-1 affirmed that. So TJ Ducklo is just lying. And I also want to remind your viewers about TJ Ducklo. He worked in the Biden administration, and it turned out that he was dating apologies. I don't know why this is ringing. Apologies for that. Someone should get the message that I'm not going to be answering their call. Give me a second. Okay, somebody gave up. I apologize for that.
That's no worries. We didn't hear it at all, but go ahead.
I have one. Oh, you didn't? Okay,
No.
All right, good. It was driving me crazy because I can hear it like it's right in my ear. TJ Ducklo is working at the White House for Biden, and it turns out that he's dating a reporter who was at Axios and was also an NBC and MSNBC contributor, this woman, Alexi McCammond. And so he's getting favorable coverage of Biden. This is like totally unethical, I think, both on the government side and certainly on the side of the journalist. And so he winds up basically getting first reassigned to work for Vice President Harris after this scandal emerges, and then he gets cashed out entirely. So Biden's like recycled him, and Politico actually realized what a high magnitude scandal this was of conflict of interest, and so Tara Palmieri, who was there at the time, covered it. And then TJ Ducklo called her up and threatened her and said, anti-women things about her. I'm sure he used the B word, that kind of thing. And so this is just a completely scummy character. And he's currently, Biden's spokesman, and he's lying about what two courts in D.C. have found as a basic matter of fact. This has nothing to do with any sensitive revelations about Joe Biden and the sad death of his son. This is about his level of mental competence, and redactions have been applied to protect any privacy interest he has. And I'll just say, like at a super high level, Rob, that it's wacky that there's any notion of a privacy interest here. Joe Biden was doing these interviews in order to make $8 million on a book review and to decide whether to resurrect his flagging political career by running for president in 2016. And then ultimately he used this book, Promise Me Dad, as a way to, springboard and try to get votes in the 2020 presidential election. There is zero privacy interest in that, but in any event, there's nothing to do with his son in this, but they're just willing to lie in order to try to convince mindless people that, we representing the Heritage Foundation here at the Oversight Project, we're like inhuman people who want to drag the Biden family through the mud. That is not our purpose.
And it's so easy to prove it's a lie, too, Jeff. Not just that, but, Biden's, a lot of his mistakes and missteps vocally have been about Beau, his son Beau, that died of cancer and that served in the military. They're public and they're all over the place. You don't have to dig into anything like that to find those issues anyway. I want to hear the tapes for exactly the reason you guys are talking about, is we deserve to know just how bad off this guy was and what the extent of it was and when it was. That's the American people's right to know that.
Absolutely.
We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to move into election integrity stuff. A lot of breaking news about that, Jeff. And as I know, most people will probably remember, you've worked election stuff. And that's the memo that got you sideways with the entire weaponized Justice Department and a couple of state AGs, too. We'll be right back with Jeff Clark from the Oversight Project.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
As you know, last night the New Jersey governor admitted that 6,600 illegal aliens had made it onto New Jersey's voter rolls. At least that number, it could be a lot larger, and 400 of them actually cast a vote. That is the largest number of foreigners ever to vote in any collection of an election in American history. When we told you that last night, the governor said, not our fault, it was a software glitch, no big deal. Well, overnight, we reached out to the software company that runs New Jersey's system, and you know what they said? There's no software glitch at all. The state of New Jersey knew they were putting non-citizens, i.e. foreigners, onto the voter rolls. It is the state's responsibility to determine who is eligible to vote and who's not. The software had it marked right. That is a major contradiction. And just a little while ago, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights in the U.S. Justice Department, Harmeet Dillon, announced that there is an investigation of New Jersey now into whether they knowingly were allowing non-citizens to vote and to get on the voter rolls. Remember, a week ago, she sent a letter out saying, if you let non-citizens vote knowingly, you're in trouble. Well, now the vendor's comments raise the very strong possibility that one of the blue states in America may have acceded to allowing non-citizens to vote. We're going to keep a close eye on that. Hope to get Harmeet Dillon on the show the next couple of days to describe what is going on. But that is a big thing.
Welcome back to Truth Thursday here on the Rob Maness Show and the Worldview Tube Network. And we're live on our X Spaces simulcast, too. My guest today is Jeff Clark, Vice President of Litigation at the Oversight Project, former Trump appointed official, both in this administration and in the first Trump administration, and was in DOJ, and worked election issues, as a matter of fact. Y'all, I'm sure y'all will remember that, Jeff. After all these years, and the next segment's dedicated to this stuff too, so we could just go wherever we want. But after all these years of people denying, especially those on the left in these blue states, that they're registering both legal non-citizens and I'm sure illegal non-citizens too. A Democrat governor has finally had to come to the podium and make the announcement that it's actually true. And it's not like 100 people, it's over 6,000, which tells me that there's probably more than that. She's just trying to stave off what she knows is coming because this administration is doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it? And look, you know what the behind-the-scenes story, Rob, on that has to be, which is that advisors, lawyers for Governor Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey come to her and they're like, it's looking like Harmeet Dillon's got us dead to rights here, and she may get all the voter rolls. So let's try to contain the damage, and we'll admit that there was a software glitch. And 6,000, 60,000, whatever the number is, people voted. I agree with you. I think it's much too small. And then consistent with my theme from your first segment about the issue of, TJ Lowe saying, just total lies about the Biden tapes case. This is a total lie from Mikey Sherrill, too. It's been exposed. The software company was talked to, and they said, no, there was no glitch. We were asked to put the illegals on the voter rolls. And so, it's just whoever advised her that she could kind of like play limited hangout and kind of disclose something. but they decided to pitch it as a software glitch, like as a total idiot. Like now she really has egg on her face, and it just further fuels it. That's not going to stop the MS Nows of the world, the New York Times, from continuing to try to run cover for the idea that the elections have been penetrated. But look, the president dropped incredibly powerful evidence both in his live speech a week ago today and in the evening, and on the White House website, showing that the Chinese, penetrated into millions of voter records. And so the Democrats, they go back into their their sessions, and they decide, hey, how are we going to answer this one? And the answer they came up with was, well, you can buy voter data. China can buy voter data. I mean, like they can, and maybe they did as a first, stage, and to figure out what they were looking for and how to do it better later. But no, they hacked into these state systems. John Solomon, who was the one who's spearheading this as a special government employee at the White House, has indicated that China hacked this. Okay. And, what happened in 2016 that caused the left to say Trump was a Russian agent, fake, the Steele dossier, fake, part of the Hillary Clinton campaign effort, right? Well, what was Russia actually doing? They were had modest amounts of money spent on social media influence campaigns where they were kind of testing the water. They did not hack millions of America's voter files like China did. So what happened in 2020 and what happened in 2016 are leagues apart. The election system in America has been, in my view, completely compromised. And there were other elements of Trump revelations a week ago today. They included that there was massive fraud in Michigan. They were paying people, I call it on a piece basis, because you come up with a fraudulent registration for a fake voter in Michigan, they're going to pay you for each one you get. And how did you get paid? You got paid in gift cards. So it's like modern Tammany Hall. You don't get cash. You don't get a government job. You get a gift card you can use. And what also came out was that information about the electronic voting systems, they were clearly compromised, for Maduro, Chavez, et cetera, down in Venezuela. And the systems in America, I'm not going to mention any companies' names, but the systems in America, even if they're different companies, they're functionally, structurally the same. They're not secure. And one of the reasons why we need election reform and we need things like the Save America Act is because we need to go back, Rob, to paper ballots counted the same day in small precincts with signature verification and with observers from both sides, from both political parties.
Yeah, and that's the way we did it for years and years and years, and it worked just fine. The country's not any bigger now than it was then. Jeff, I guess I don't understand why when Assistant AG Dillon asked for the voter rolls so they can help clean them up, because we have access at the federal level, you have access to different databases, and you can help the states clean their voter rolls. Why not do it? What is the issue that's driving these blue states, the governors, to say no? Because New Jersey was one.
Because they're hiding something. It's the same, general theme. You pick something, that can have a clear theme throughout, right? It's because, they're hiding the Biden tapes because they don't want that to show that Joe Biden was not capable of being president. They're hiding the voter rolls because they're going to show that there are lots of illegals on there and that there are other people who should be cleaned off either because they're dead or they moved, or they're not eligible for some other reason. Maybe they're convicted felons, et cetera, right? So they don't want independent verification of that. And what's their legal argument? I mean, their legal argument is basically to say the elections have always been controlled by the states. This is not the federal government's business. Like Harmeet Dillon, butt out. And that's just a total lie. Like if you look, I just tell your viewers, go look at the elections clause in Article 1 of the Constitution, okay? So it confers the power in the initial instance on the states to set the rules, but it gives Congress the power to override those rules. Inherently, you can't have, federal officials being elected based on exclusive, state enclaves as if it's their only, they have that power. It can't be invaded. Like, it's not the way the system was set up from the start. It's the same thing with the presidential elections. Like, the states, they set rules for the choice of electors, and the state legislature can ultimately decide to, certify a new slate of electors. But in terms of the rules for how you elect the people who become the electors, the federal government can override those rules. And so you just get so much myth making and lying in the media to confuse people. Always, Rob, this, I'm sure you tell your viewers to do this. Go look at the document. Don't lose your literacy. Go look at the United States Constitution, and you'll see for yourself that I'm telling you the truth.
Oh, yeah, I've read it many times, and to many people, the citizens' surprise, they don't know it's there when I pull mine out and I read it to them, and I go, look, there's always been a role for the federal government to participate in setting the rules for federal elections. One of the questions I wanted to ask you in this regard on the voter rolls and those kinds of things, how has the federal government generally approached it to try to give that, the power of the states, obviously, to set the rules as it is in the Constitution? How has that traditionally been worked with between the feds and the state governments? Is there anything unusual today about what's happening as opposed to the way things have been in the past? Because it's always been done, as you said.
Look, I think, the basic idea that we should have an election day, right? Like, that's set in federal election law. Sadly, the majority of the Supreme Court in the Mississippi case this term went south, and now we're not going to have an election day. It's okay to have, a couple week window after for ballots to be received. The theory that they have postmarks showing they were sent on or before election day, which I think is totally contrary to the fact that Congress set, the first Tuesday in November as the day for federal House and Senate member elections, or from the president on the 4-year cycle. But other than that, like, the states have a lot of leeway on, the time and place and manner of elections, right? Like, the Constitution is not dictating to them where to have the polling places. They're not dictating to them how many hours the polls need to be open, et cetera. And so that's been given a lot of leeway by the federal government, right? It's not like Congress wants to legislate on all that minutia. Right. And so, but what's happened in recent years, call it, the last couple decades, is we've gotten structural perversions of the system at the state level. Whenever Democrats, or if they get, in my view, kind of stupid rhino type Republicans to agree to change the election laws, we get far too much mail-in voting, which, if you go back to the joint commission that President Carter was on with Jim Baker, back when Carter could be honest, and it's probably a senility issue with him too, because fast forward, some spokesman, around 2020 starts saying, like, oh, he regrets what he said about mail-in ballots. But he said back then, when the commission was operating in the early 2000s, like mail-in ballots are ripe with fraud, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's a key area where Congress, and this is why we have, the proposed Save America Act. Congress should act to get rid of the things that are big structural attempts to compromise our election system. Also, we get all this computer voting. At one of the major election systems in 2020, for instance, was not certified by Texas because they thought that it was electronically porous. It was not secure. Yet we had, Chris Krebs, who Trump has, I think, left in disgrace, who said in 2020, and the left keeps going back to this, that was the most secure election in history. We know after the president's speech last night and the documents that it was the most unsecure election in history because it had been penetrated by China.
Yeah, a friend of mine was one of the people that Texas hired to look at the vulnerabilities in these digital voting systems. I interviewed him before he passed. He passed away a year and a half after I interviewed him. But I interviewed him about it. And Dennis Hawes, my friend's name, he said, I recommended they never use digital voting systems again based on the vulnerabilities in the software. And he's a software engineer. Right. We got to take another break, Jeff. When we come back, I want to dive into this China piece not just from the voter files perspective, but from a national security perspective. And then this shadow government thing with Nikki Floris and keeping the PDB from telling the president the truth about the security risk. We'll be right back with Jeff Clark from Oversight Project, the VP of Litigation.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial-scale systems to whole-house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
Ahead and ask Ms. Floris, in your testimony, you say that we do know that our adversaries are actively trying to influence public opinion and electoral processes in advance of the 2020 election. You've mentioned in your testimony influencing public opinion through various social media activity. What electoral processes, what efforts to interfere with electoral processes are you aware of at this time?
So, Sarah, thank you for the question. As we roll into 2020, the one thing I want to highlight is that countries like Russia and China, they pose a pervasive and persistent threat. It's not just based on the electoral cycle. Their foreign influence operations are essentially always present. When it comes to the electoral process, you can look at something as voter suppression. The whole concept of pushing out false information, of highlighting places to vote that are actually not true, this whole concept of disinformation that we've really seen the Russians focus on. Okay, that in and of itself can interfere with the electoral process.
Okay, but nothing to the extent of actively trying to hack into or interfere with electoral systems.
To date, sir, we have not seen anything specific regarding hacking into the electoral systems of the 2020 elections.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Rob Meda Show, and it's Truth Thursday, folks, and this is the day that I like to do a show that puts a lot of truth out there to contradict what people like that lady just said. And that lady's Nikki Floris, and that clip is from 2018, and so during the first Trump administration. And why is that important? And why is my guest today the VP of Litigation for the Oversight Project? Because it's Mr. Jeff Clark, who was in that administration in the DOJ. And Nikki Floris, I think Jeff was on, is she a seventh floor type in the FBI? Talked to Chris Wray all the time. And at the moment she was doing that, apparently the emails that President Trump declassified and released show that she was saying, I'm basically running a shadow government and we're keeping election material out of the presidential daily brief. And she's not only doing that internally in the FBI, but also working with people at the National Security Agency and other intelligence agencies as that PDB is constructed in order to do that. So it sounds like a conspiracy and sedition to me if she's attempting to prevent the president of the United States from doing his job and the will of the American people from being enacted through him to do his job by not telling him the Chinese have gotten 220 million voter files, which is almost all of them. I'll be honest with you.
Yes, Rob. I mean, it's mind-blowing, right? The level of these revelations about Nikki Floris. And yes, she was a high-ranking official, inside the Foreign Influence Task Force, FITF. And while, they're getting this information that China has hacked into our system, she is, fielding questions from others inside the intelligence community of like, oh, well, I guess we got to put this in front of Trump. And it's like, no, don't worry about that. I'm basically running a shadow government at this point to keep the president in the dark. I've never seen anything as damning as that, and I am not a man given to exaggeration. Rob, you're forcing me to tell you that sometimes because just outrageous things have been happening over the last 4 to 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
But there were maybe 2 instances where I thought it was like so outrageous that I was losing my temper. And I can remember being on Bannon during those 2 instances, and I was about to like really go off. And Bannon stopped me and he said, "Hey, wait a minute, Jeff, calm down a little bit. You're my straight man, so don't do that." But I'm gonna use the T word, Rob. This is treason. I do not understand how you can be a high-ranking official at the Justice Department, in the FBI. You know something the president does not know, and it's your duty to share with him, that our elections have been compromised by our foreign main adversary, China, a communist government, a corrupt government, a mafia government for the benefit of a party elite with a lifetime dictator. And you do not tell the president about that because he could use that to his electoral advantage and his litigation advantage to say, hey, we got to do more checking about this 2020 election because of the prospect that it was compromised. And she's like, no, we can't trust him with that. I've set up a shadow government to block it. That is treasonous. She also said something that's like much more artful and Chris Wray-like. She has an email where she says, I'm massaging the presidential daily briefings. Well,
right.
Like whether you move the shoulder this way or that way, like that shouldn't be happening. The president should get the straight dope, Rob. This is what, the military and intelligence agencies deserve. The president deserves from them. And if you compromise that, you are violating the constitutional chain of command. You are doing something that is treasonous and disloyal to the country. There's just no way around it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Look, I'm the Bannon. Unfortunately, I try to stay straight man type and only get angry at certain things. This is one of them. I'm just like shocked that when I read that email, somebody sent me a screenshot of it shortly after the president's speech, and I read it, and I'm like, this has got to be fake. You're kidding, right? And the person said, no, sir, this is really in there. You need to go look at the files and those kinds of things because I've been really livid to yell at about one other instance, and it has to do with the Obama administration and the intelligence capabilities assessment that set the stage for the Russia hoax. Because I deal in the military, in the Pentagon, I dealt in intelligence capability assessments and those kind of things. And as soon as I read the unclassified version of that, I was like, this has been faked. So this was the second time about this issue. The 2 things like you, I mean, I'm just absolutely livid. Now, you use the T word. You're the first former government attorney in this system of the Department of Justice that's worked in it that actually has used that word. It's definitely sedition and seditious conspiracy. And that's the thing that shocked me when I read that. I saw the date. I'm like, my goodness, just not long after Joe Biden took control. I mean, we're putting people in prison for 20-something years for seditious conspiracy on trumped-up charges from January 6th. And that false narrative that was painstakingly constructed and built, like Enrique Tarrio, his name is on my mind a lot since I read that email. Because, I mean, the man spent years in solitary confinement and was facing over 20 years of prison time. And his cohorts were in for over a decade, all of them, most of them approaching 20 years, and they were not treated well at all. And this person, I just got to ask you, why hasn't she been arrested yet?
The people worry about things, and rightfully so, that white collar criminals get treated differently than ordinary Americans, right? So let's suppose, like, to my mind, this is like the worst kind of view of it. somebody goes to January 6th and they decide I'm going to make some trouble, and then they push their way past police, or they shove a police officer or something. Like, I don't think that's conduct that I really condone, right? But I also think there was a lot more than that happening during the summer of love earlier in 2020. That people got off scot-free, and then when they were brought up on charges, sometimes then they were able to get tort recoveries afterwards. I mean, it's crazy. But here's this woman now. She works at Microsoft. I'm sure making very handsome amounts of money, and somehow she's not being treated like anything like the January 6ers, even though I think she's in a much more damaging position, and she did more damage. There, it's not the massaging email has been covered, but to a lesser extent. Certainly, the shadow government email has been covered on in conservative media a lot. But the thing that's not getting as much conservative media is that there's another thing she did. So the FBI field office in Albany, they're uncovering information that the Chinese are using TikTok to compromise the election. And they're like, we kind of got them, dead to rights on this, and they want to keep going. And the order comes down from her, from headquarters in FBI, of no, stop that. Don't say anything about that, because that contradicts Chris Wray's official testimony that there was nothing going on in terms of foreign election interference.
I'm glad I'm glad you brought that up. Look, this is the first show I've done. This is show number 692, I think, Jeff. And it's the first time I've chuckled before I spoke in my opening monologue in every segment of the cold opens, because they're making me chuckle, having lived through this and watched people get hurt like you through the weaponization of the government and all of this stuff. And the China. Here's the reason, folks, why the 220 million voter files that the Chinese stole is important. And what Jeff just said about her and the TikTok issue is extremely critical to understand, because while you can buy those files in most cases, some of them you can't. The military absentee ballot files, the military files for the voters themselves, you can't buy those because they contain information where you can put information together and figure out where people are deployed to, because that's why military people are submitting absentee ballots, is because they're deployed. Number one. Number two, when you combine all this information with the system TikTok, which Steve Bannon and I are both on the Committee on the Present Danger of China, we've been railing against it for years because Chinese Communist Party operatives use that system to collect targeting data on all the individuals. And the targeting data they're getting is primarily young Americans that are voting age. And think about what's happening today, Jeff, with the finally the president has called the Democrat Socialists of America what they are, communist, and how the young people that are voting for these individuals to win these offices have been indoctrinated and brainwashed, essentially. And that is what the Chinese operatives and the Chinese operation is really all about, in addition to faking driver's licenses and ballots for mail-in ballots and those kind of things. It's a national security threat, and it's a crisis because of this lady's actions.
Absolutely, Rob. And look, I do feel great personal vindication about that, right? I'm still not in a spot because I'm pinned down by these bar proceedings that have gone into their 6th year. And the DOJ sued the DC judges who supervise the bar officials and disciplinary officials and the disciplinary officials on my behalf, which I'm very grateful for. And so, what has the Democrat, Party done? They brought in Joe Biden's Solicitor General, Elizabeth Prelogar. And, it's amazing, right? Just at some level for little old me, right? They brought out the heaviest legal guns they possibly can. They got, collection of legal scholars. Oh no, Jeff Clark should be disbarred. Former DOJ officials, like one guy who used to work for me, even though I can't even remember him, was on LinkedIn, like mouthing off against me and saying, I'm very pleased to have signed a letter, a brief against Jeff Clark, and I worked closely with him. Like, again, I don't remember this guy. So he's just trying to get clicks, based off of me. And why do I feel the vindication? Like, look, I saw a classified version of a foreign election report, which was supposed to be released as of something like December 19th, 2020. But the intelligence community, people like Nikki Floris, they held it up and it didn't get released until a few months into the Biden administration. Now, I can't talk about the classified version of it, but I can talk about the public version that came out during the Biden administration. And that version shows that Radcliffe, who was the head of ODNI at the time, he was the director of national intelligence, he dissented from the intelligence community report because he was like, it's clear that you're trying to play up Russia and play down China. And, the opposite is true. And he also was pointing out that what happened, even by the majority of the intelligence community view in 2020 was worse than what happened in 2016. But, yet you're trying to turn that upside down. And then there was another guy, this guy, Barry Zulauf, who was the ombudsman of the intelligence community of ODNI. He also thought that the majority approach was deficient and wrote about it. So I'm seeing these things and I'm like, we have to investigate the heck out of, admittedly, during a limited window of time, the 2020 election. We can't just say, oh, there's nothing to see here, move on. That is unwise. And it is a major national security issue. So, but I couldn't really fully get into that. So now that the president's declassified this stuff, it shows that I was right all along. And yet they're still trying to take my bar license, Rob.
Yes, they are. And we're going to talk about that in Brandon Gill in the next segment. I got to take another break, Jeff, but I can't wait to hear some of your comments on Brandon Gill's interrogation of the president of the American Bar Association just this week. I think it was yesterday, actually, because it's pretty funny in a way, but it's deadly serious in another. I'll be right back with Jeff Clark on The Rob Maness Show.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
This week, you introduced the Citizenship Act of 2026. I think this is so important, Senator. Can you break this down for all of us and tell us about this?
Well, every generation has a Supreme Court decision that's so bad you hear about it, you read about it, and you think how could the Supreme Court rule in the way that they did? And that recent decision that just came down that struck down President Trump's ban on birthright citizenship is one of those decisions that I had so many of my friends and so many Hoosiers reach out to me and said, how can this be the case? But in the decision, it was a 6-3 decision to strike down President Trump's executive order. Justice Kavanaugh said in his concurrent decision that what all of the Supreme Court justices that were, even the ones that were on the wrong side of this, all 9 of them agreed that the children of invaders are not eligible for birthright citizenship. And by the way, the Supreme Court doesn't get to determine who an invader is. The Congress and the president determine that. So my bill is simple. It says that there is an invasion of illegals in our country. That's a fact. And that those invaders, their babies cannot become anchor babies. They do not warrant birthright citizenship. And Justice Kavanaugh told us, even though he was on the wrong side of the decision, that is the case. That would pass constitutional muster. We don't need a constitutional amendment to declare this. We need Congress to step up and act and say that the babies of invaders, in this case illegals in our country, are not eligible for birthright citizenship. My bill does that. I introduced it on Monday. I'm building strong support. There are House members who are introducing similar bills in the House. This week I gathered several co-sponsors, and I imagine that as more Americans become aware of this bad Supreme Court decision, they're going to demand that Congress step up and do something to act on it.
I mean, it's just common sense. I think you're right. Once people learn more about this and what's actually been going on, they're pretty outraged, especially when you see the billboards popping up at the southern border, Senator.
It's just common sense. Welcome back to True Thursday. Truer words have never been spoken on this show. It's just common sense, folks. And my guest today is the Vice President of Litigation at the Oversight Project, Jeff Clark. And Jeff, before we get into the birthright citizenship thing, I know you guys are doing work in that space too. I want to talk to you. I want to talk and give you a chance to speak about the American Bar Association president's appearance in front of Congressman Brandon Gill's committee this week. Now, Congressman Gill is a friend of mine. I've shared a stage with him before. I like him a lot. He's very bright. I think he's a great American, and he has a great staff. I got to compliment his staff. Somebody is doing a great job at finding Brandon's voice and putting them in the questions that he needs to ask. But he asked the ABA president a whole series of questions because she's a DEI woke Marxist. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And the ABA, the big question that he asked that I thought was most important was the ABA thinks that the Supreme Court should look like America. You know the old phrase, should look like America. And he asked her, well, if that's the case, if that's what the ABA believes, do you think that the next Supreme Court justice should not be a black American? Because there would be too many, what he's implying. Yep. And she couldn't answer the question.
He just took her apart. And one of his clips I reposted on X on Twitter with my commentary. So people could go find that at at Jeff Clark US on X. Mm-hmm. I just urge you to watch his entire questioning of her. And I'm told there were other members of Congress who yielded their time to him because they realized that he was just like slicing and dicing. And I think he's great. And you really got to watch him. I think he's up and coming. And look, I was a high-ranking official in the ABA, Rob. You probably don't know this. Like, this is the kind of thing that the mainstream media doesn't tell Americans because they decided to portray me as like, a nobody with no expertise in anything, who was just a Trump toady and would do whatever President Trump said. Not that I have like these massive mainstream legal credentials, from Big Law and from the ABA. The administrative law section, which I was on the governing council of the ABA about, is more moderate than other parts of the ABA, and certainly, of the people who occupied the presidency for many decades now. And so, anyway, the ABA also drafts these model ethics codes, and then they get adopted by the states or they get adopted by DC, and that's part of the problem of all this like ethics lawfare and barfare. Mm-hmm. But sort of maybe a future appearance about that. Enough about me. Let's talk about Senator Banks' bill, because it's truly brilliant, Rob. And we at the Oversight Project, and we're also heading up the Mass Deportation Coalition, we are very strongly behind this bill, and we need it to save the country.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know that. Look, Jeff, the Senate is just being intransigent over the Save America Act, but they'll do things like, just before I came on, I saw a public announcement that they put the next Ukraine support bill, funding bill, on the schedule at the same time that they're saying that, well, they got to get the NDAA funding bill passed before they can do reconciliation, which has parts of the Save America Act on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Can we get Banks's bill passed?
We have to. And Look, it's brilliant. Let me talk about his bill, and there's a reason why he mentioned Justice Kavanaugh's separate opinion. I don't think the mainstream media has well covered this, right? So the Chief Justice and Amy Coney Barrett joined the liberals to write the main opinion by the chief, and then there's of course the harder core conservatives, Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch. They were dissenting. And they had different opinions there too. Thomas's opinion is his views are the ones I'm most close to, and I think he did a masterful job. And it's he wrote at a length he doesn't typically write in for dissent, but Justice Kavanaugh occupied a middle position, and basically what he said was, look, we didn't need to decide this case on a constitutional basis. And the problem when you decide things on a constitutional basis is now you've thrown it into a world where it can potentially only be changed by a new decision by this court or by the constitutional amendment process, which is very difficult. Obviously it's only happened, a limited number of times in our history, especially if you kind of like take the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights that followed quickly in the wake of the ratification of the Constitution, vindicating George Mason. His view that we needed a Bill of Rights, right? Like then you really get down to pretty limited number over our 250 years, less than that in terms of the ratification of the Constitution that have been passed. And so you should be cautious about doing that. And you could have decided this case purely on statutory grounds and said, look, Congress adopted a statute. It looks like it's largely, aligned with the text of the 14th Amendment, but, it's based on essentially kind of codifying the view of some Supreme Court cases and going back to English common law about jus soli, the law of the soil, versus jus sanguinis, the law of blood. And that, the English king wanted as much jurisdiction over people as possible. So, if you got there and somebody's born there, then you're a subject. I think subjectship is different than citizenship. Yep. I think the atom of sovereignty, to repurpose a Justice Kennedy quotation, was split when the Declaration of Independence was announced, and then the Constitution followed in its wake after the bad experiment with the Articles of Confederacy being too weak. And that element of citizenship is what's being totally trampled by this idea that we can have birthright citizenship. I commend everybody to read Justice Thomas's masterful dissent about that. But the interesting thing about this idea of the statute and of the case law that the Chief Justice draws on is that there are common law exceptions that were created, like for children of ambassadors, like for invaders, children of invaders, and so these were not passed as the text in our Constitution in the 14th Amendment, right? Yet these exceptions are now recognized. Okay, well, if we're going to have these exceptions, one of them is for invaders. And so Senator Banks brilliantly is saying, okay, we're going to double down on that. That's what you say. Then here's an exception. We've defined people of illegal aliens, their children, as invaders. And so that means that they can't have birthright citizenship. Like that's a game, set, match kind of move. You're right that we need to focus on the practicalities of getting it passed. But I think that the chief and Justice Barrett, if they see that as the expression of the will of the American people through Congress in a new law, especially given that there's Section 5 of the 14th Amendment that gives Congress the powers to enforce the 14th Amendment. I think they'd have to, put their hands up and say, all right, well, then, people who are the children of declared invaders under the law of Congress, they're not citizens. I think it's just great. And so we're totally behind it. We need to save the country, Rob. And, Senator Banks's bill, the Save America Act, we need them both.
You're absolutely right, sir. That's why I wanted to get you to talk about it, because of the bill itself and the fact that Oversight Project is supporting it. And everything. Tell folks real quick, I'm out of time, unfortunately. Tell folks where they can find Oversight Project so they can help.
Sure. So, please come help us. Please come follow us, even if you don't have the means to help. It's at itsyourgov.org. So itsyourgov.org. And then it's the same handle, with an @ sign on X. And you can follow me on X. My primary account is Jeff at JEFFCLARK on X.
Right,
on US.
I'm
sorry, US.
US at the end
Jeff
of it.
Clark US.
Yeah, at Jeff Clark US. So, all right, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your time. I know you're a very busy guy. We try not to tap in too often, but I look forward to having you back soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. I always enjoy it. And, you know what you're talking about. And when I, throw out some of these constitutional points, like, I can tell you're nodding from understanding. Sometimes I appear, in more general sources and there's not the expertise. So kudos to you.
Well, this is fantastic. Thanks a lot. We'll see you later. And Monday, folks, More War Monday. Todd Wood, CDM Press CEO, has been in Lebanon all week. So we're going to have some interesting discussion on More War Monday. I'll see you then.